So the reviews for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth have come out today. The embargo, as it were, has ended, and the demo that Square Enix released, they updated that and put in the new Junin area that you can play right now. It just requires an update. I haven't played that portion of the demo myself. I've just been skimming through some of the reviews on Metacritic. I believe the game has like a 93. Let me check right now. Yeah, it has a 93 based on 114 critic reviews. And the lowest scores that I saw were 80s, low 80s. So, generally the game has been received extremely well. But something that caught my attention with a lot of the reviews, and there hasn't been, as I just showed, there hasn't been a single mixed review, which is already concerning for a game like this, especially a Square Enix title. But one thing that I've noticed with some of these reviews, I noticed it with IGN's review as well, is that they admit that the game, they say it's good, everyone's saying the game is good, but there's two primary issues with it. The first is that it has too much filler content, and that has to do with the fact that it's an open world game, and it's not just an open world game, it's a massive open world game. And massive open world games, like a good example would be The Witcher, another good example would be the Fallout games. A game like that tends to have a lot of unnecessary filler content. GameSpot in particular, they brought up the mini games and have stated that the mini games slow down the pacing. But like I said, IGN also brought up some of the same points. In their verdict, they say that the mini games, side quests, and other diversions fill the spaces. Again, fill, that's the key word, filler. Not everyone's going to appreciate the side stuff, and the game clearly has some issues with pacing, which is natural, I guess, because it's an open world game, a big open world game. But another thing that caught my attention even more is what many of these gaming journalists have said about the ending. The game apparently does not have a good ending, and neither did Final Fantasy VII Remake. The ending pretty much ruined the entire story because it brought up the concept of a multiverse, essentially, an alternate timeline. And that's what made it not a true remake, is because they included that type of bullshit into it. And I was surprised at GameSpot's review because this game was reviewed by Tamor Hussein, who reviewed the first game as well. He reviewed Final Fantasy VII Remake, and he gave the game a 10. And that game is nowhere near a 10. If you go into it and you play it with, a critical mind, that game has nowhere near the level of quality that warrants a 10 score. And from just judging from what I've played of the demo, neither does this game. So this seems like more of a realistic score. It's like an 8, whether it's a low 8 or a mid 8, I can't say because I haven't played the full game myself. But anything above that seems to be highly unrealistic, especially all of these 100s that I'm seeing. And I recall reading one of these reviews here. What Metacritic does, they take passages from, I guess, the summary of all of these different reviews. Instead of posting the entire thing, you would actually have to go to the actual site for that. But from what I've noticed, one of these reviews stated that the game doesn't have a good ending, all of the content together is what makes it good. I don't know, it seems like these gaming journalists are saying, ignore the story and just play it for the experience of playing a modern, open world experience with these iconic characters, as it were. And that bothers me because the story in a Final Fantasy game matters. The story in a Final Fantasy VII game, especially one that's supposed to be, this half of it's a remake and then the other half of it is new or some shit. It's supposed to be something that's relevant. I mean, even, this review with Shack News, Rebirth's narrative choices can feel inconsistent at times and often questionable. But it's saying that because of the combat system, the soundtrack, and the characters, that makes the game worth playing, even if everything doesn't fit together from a narrative standpoint. They say that they're looking forward to seeing how the story ends for the next entry. If it didn't end properly in the first game and it doesn't end properly in the second game, how do you expect for it to end properly with the third entry? I'm just very curious as to how these people came up with these conclusions about this game. Let me take a look at one of the more positive reviews. Let me take a look at one of the 100s here. All right, so VGC, they're saying the open world content, has its rough spots, and they're saying that the game's story is left somewhat deflated. I mean, so that's basically them saying that once again the ending doesn't really stick. The ending isn't really worth all the time that you put into the game, but then you still give it a 100 score. This is what I'm talking about. When it comes to gaming journalism, quality when it comes to objectively relaying, a game's quality. And these are supposed to be professionals, in this industry, professional critics. If I can't trust what they're saying as a consumer, then whose opinion am I supposed to go by? Many have turned to YouTubers, your Angry Joes and your Skill Ups and your ACGs to get their credible information. But see, those people make money doing that shit. That's their livelihood. In a way, I really don't trust them either. Because if you look at a lot of the reviews from the channels that I just mentioned, among others like Actman, for example, a lot of these people will post reviews and will most of the time agree with the mainstream consensus. I have yet to see an Angry Joe review where he's trashed the game that received this high critical praise, so where you can tell that's genuinely his opinion of said product. In fact, I recall him giving some high scores to games that were popular while admitting that he's not that big of a fan. I think Sekiro was one of those games. I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me on that. But that's something he tends to do. He'll only give scores to a game if it matches with the mainstream media's consensus. With some of the other YouTubers like Skill Up, I've seen him divert away. He did it last year with Final Fantasy 16, so I commended him for that review. But for the most part, he's the same way as Angry Joe. And as far as I'm concerned with Actman, once again using him as an example, he lost all credibility when he basically shilled and fanboyed for Elden Ring. And then, helped create this all this drama with that other YouTuber, Quantum TV or whatever his name is. So I stopped taking him seriously from that point forward. This is why I've decided to post my own reviews, as it were, because I just don't trust any of these gaming journalists. I damn sure don't trust any of the YouTubers. I trust the YouTubers even less than I do the gaming journalists. Yeah, everyone who's taking a look at these reviews, it's a Square Enix game. It's an open world game. It's not really a remake the way Square Enix has marketed, these games to be a remake. And on top of that, it introduces the multiverse, and the multiverse has not been handled well with any major franchise. I don't care if you're talking about Marvel, Mortal Kombat, or DC, or any other major IP. Whenever the multiverse is included to be a major part of any fictional story, the writers never handle it well. And that would explain why some of these, well, many of these, review publications are saying the ending just isn't good. I would like to cover Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I do not know if I'm going to cover it right when it comes out. It may be a while. I gotta wait and see how things play out. I don't mind covering the game. So eventually, yeah, I do intend to have a retrospective uploaded on the channel for Rebirth. But like I said, I'm taking these reviews with an extreme grain of salt. And anyone else who likes to exercise common sense, which isn't a large portion of the video game community, unfortunately, would be in their best interest to do the same.
And if nothing else I've said in this video doesn't stick, I'll put it like this. Square Enix doesn't have to try with these games, especially when it comes to Final Fantasy VII. Literally, all they would have to do is take the female characters of this game, put them in some suggestive clothing, and motherfuckers will go out and they'll spend double of what the game's standard asking price is. Triple, even. Well, perhaps I spoke too soon.